And welcome back to the Financially Simple Experience. So friends, to set the stage for today's episode, I want to address next week's episode. So next week, I have a father and son, a family business, who's going to talk through the frustrations, the challenges, the victories, the benefits of working in a family business. Now, that being said, you're going to hear a dynamic duo. You're going to hear a father and son who have a lot of knowledge and who have tactically built a business for success. But that's not the case with so many. It's not the case. In fact, family business is tough. It is extremely hard. We work with a number of business owners and their families within our business unit. And I can tell you horror stories upon horror stories of how hard it is for the kids to take over the family business. So today I want to outline 4 different pitfalls that could happen when your kids take over the family business. And more importantly, how to deal with it, how to address it so they don't become problems for you and your business. Now, to set the stage properly, we have to understand some research. There's a rule called the 3-generation rule. Now, if you've been in business long enough, perhaps you've been in a seminar somewhere and you've heard the stat. The stat says, accordingly, roughly about 30% of businesses survive from transition of the first to the second, and only about 12% of businesses survive to the 3rd generation, and thus the 3-generation rule. Because transferring a business from the founder generation to the secondary generation is tough. It's hard. Not to mention now to go to the 3rd generation gets extremely, extremely tough. So we have this thing called the 3-generation rule. But I don't want to discourage you. Josh Barron, one of the world's leading family business consultants, totally disagrees and gets frustrated with the 3-generation rule. And I'm going to quote him. He says, quote, "I get frustrated with the 3-generation rule and the failure rate of family business. Most of it is nonsense. The reality is that making a business last 90 years or 3 generations is a huge challenge." Doesn't mean it can't be done. He just says, man, it's a major challenge. And we would all agree with that. Now, the research shows that about 74% of family businesses made it for at least 30 years. 30 years. Think about that. 46% lasted for 60 years, and now 33% have survived until the 90 years or longer. So there's this challenge of this mindset that you may hear in seminars and on various podcasts out there, that this 3-generation rule, just sell it before you pass it down to your 2nd generation. The reality is most recent research is just debunking that. A lot of studies, and we'll put some studies on the blog for this particular sighting, so here to help you think through the challenges ahead. But nonetheless, there are some pitfalls. There are some pitfalls that we as business owners need to think through when we're considering our kids and our kids taking over the business. And in no specific order, here's what I often see. And friends, I've been sitting across as a consultant, as a business owner myself, in a family business. I've been doing this for a long time. I've heard some unbelievable horror stories. I've seen unbelievable successes. You know, we're a tenacious group, as often say, us business owners. We're willing to charge hell with a water pistol. That's what I firmly believe. And if someone tells us, no, it can't be done, what are we going to do? We're going to say, by God, I'll show you how to do this. I love that. I love the tenacity. Oh man, the vigor, the bullheadedness of business owners. But nonetheless, education helps us. And if we apply it, we can often sidestep pitfalls. So one of the biggest pitfalls I see consistently is entitlement. Entitlement. But entitlement is not necessarily your kids. In today's generation, they get a lot of bad rap, and sometimes rightfully so, but I'm sure that's been going on for millennia. Entitlement seems to be everywhere. But let me warn us. Entitlement often takes place with the owner. That's right, the founder group. See, we have this idea that we're going to continue to run the business till we die, and then everyone else will just stand back and wait their turn to run the business. I've seen this so many times. That yes, my children want to come in and work in the business, and yes, they want to have ownership, and yes, they want to modernize, but they just don't know what they're doing. I've been doing this for 45 years, 60 years. I'm not going to let them run the business until I'm dead and gone. This entitlement that we owners have, and it's pride, if we want to be truthful about it, it's pride. But our pride many times can harm significantly our value. Pride. So we're entitled as owners. Then we have the team members. Well, let's not talk about the kids yet. We're talking about the employees who are unrelated to your particular family. These employees have been watching. They've been in the trenches for you for some time. They've been watching the business grow, and now it's their turn to take leadership. And how dare you bring about your child, your son, your daughter into the business and place them in front of me or subvert my authority or my tenure in the business? That's right. Team members often may feel entitled. They can feel frustrated, and rightfully so. Let's be honest, rightfully so. How dare us as business owners not consider this? And then we finally get to our kids. Now, children, generations removed, they can feel entitled, and they may even show it. See, your children may not be willing to wait until their 50s or 60s or 40s before you slide aside and let them take the reins. Perhaps, just perhaps, you've had them in the business since they were 10, 11, 12. They remember what it was like in the early days. They remember mom and dad coming home just exhausted, worn down from the day's events. And perhaps, just perhaps, they participated. About 4 years ago, 3 to 4 years ago, we moved locations to our first big office. And it was about 7:30 at night one evening. And in order to cut costs, because of the sheer cost of moving locations, we decided as a team we would paint. And obviously, whenever rookies paint, we get paint everywhere. And I can remember at 7:30 one night, exhausted. I'd been at the office working physical manual labor since about 5 o'clock that morning. Looked across, and at that time, my 7-8-year-old was on his hands and knees with me. We were working side by side, laughing and joking. And I was watching him exert an enormous amount of energy to scrape paint off the floor. Perhaps, just perhaps, you can remember glimpses in your mind of your children and their youth in the trenches beside you, working on the business. Do we not give any credence to the fact that these children have been in the business and have grown up, seeing the business nurture, seeing the business morph, seeing the business grow? And then now they feel entitled that, hey, you've been grooming me for this for years. Here I am now in my mid-40s and I'm just now taking over? That's a pitfall. But let's consider the kids outside the business. You know, not every child of yours may participate in your business. I can remember one particular company years ago that had the daughter had actually risen in the ranks and become a VP in a pretty sizable company, middle market company. And the other 3 children had nothing they wanted to do with it. And then all of a sudden, whenever the baton was handed off, entitlement from kids outside the business. How dare you? When are we going to get our shot in the business? They had not paid their tuition to work in the business for all these years. No, they hadn't done that. But all of a sudden, they were entitled. How dare you benefit one over the other? So friends, entitlement is a huge, huge, huge pitfall. How do we deal with entitlement? We deal with things like equalization. How do we give an asset of X value to one child and an asset of Y value to another? How is it we're going to punish one child who's been working in the business for decades and saying, well, you're going to get the business, which they probably helped grow the value significantly through blood, sweat, and tears, but yet we're going to equalize and give assets of the estate to other children. We're going to give the business to one child, but we're going to give cash to another. Is that right? What about gifting? Well, maybe we should gift the business to one child, and we're gonna move away from entitlement early. Maybe we're gonna gift some stock to a team member in order to remove entitlement. Maybe we're going to gift some stock to our spouse. There's a number of things I've seen. Here's the reality. If you want to deal with entitlement, I can tell you there's a myriad of pitfalls. There's a myriad of landmines. Work with an exit planner sooner than later. Like yesterday. You want to start thinking about your exit long before you ever plan on exiting the company, whether that be through a sale outside the company or whether that be a transfer internally to the children that you may desire to move your company into a second or third generation. Friends, there's a number of things you can do, but unless you focus and recognize that entitlement is one of the pitfalls that will destroy a generational business, you'll become a statistic. Another pitfall is this. Dad, that's your dream, not mine. If I had a nickel, friends, for every time a business owner comes in, they say, well, my child's going to take over the business. And I ask the question, have you asked them that? Well, no, but I just know they're going to do that. Well, what do they want to do? Oh, well, they want to go and then fill in the blank. As I mentioned earlier, your children watched you in the infancy of your business. They remember you coming home frustrated. They remember you coming home ready to just strangle somebody over an event at the office or over an event at work. They remember you fussing about a contract, an employee, a cost increase, something. And they'd seen the stress that has taken on your life. No wonder they don't want to step in the shoes. It's your dream for them to take over the reins. It's not theirs. They don't want to deal with the stress, the headache, and everything else that you've been dealing with for all these years. They don't want to feel that way. They don't even have the same dream of growing to a multi-state conglomeration. They don't have a dream to grow the assets or the revenue to a certain mile mark. They don't care. It's your dream. Friends, if I could tell you the number of times that through exit planning, we get down to the kids don't want it. They don't want it. They're just doing it to please you. And therefore, when they step in that role and they take ownership through whatever mechanism, whatever estate planning or tax planning or business planning mechanism we can facilitate to transfer ownership, the business goes into atrophy at some point because it was your dream, never theirs. That's a pitfall that will destroy multi-generational business. Another pitfall is planning for future generations. Now, whenever I started my business, I can remember saying, I do not want my children involved in this company long term. I hear blue collar workers who just sweat, just deal with stress, that maybe have some sort of a construction phase, and they say, I do not want my children doing this. I've heard people who build swimming pools say, I do not want my kids building swimming pools in 10 years. I've heard people who are loggers saying, I do not want my kids being loggers. I'm reminded of the old songs, Mama, Don't Let Your Babies Grow Up to Be Cowboys. It's an old song I can remember listening to my great-great-grandmother sing from generations ago. Because we have this thing that, man, maybe I don't want my kids doing this exact same thing that I'm dealing with now. The reality is that some of us are in our second generation. We receive the business through whatever mechanism, but we receive the business and we have this passion to continue the family business. Maybe it's farming. I know a lot of folk in the farming industry. They've inherited land and their daddy or their daddy's daddy farmed this land. This land has been in our family for many, many generations, and we're going to hold the land. Well, friends, if this is you, if you find yourself saying we want to make a multi-generational business, then start planning now. There's psychology involved. There's estate laws. There's tax laws. There's planning mechanisms that you can do to help increase your likelihood of future success for future business owners. Not just your children, but your children's children. There are ways to transfer the business through generation after generation where we don't create entitlement. I remember a parable I heard recently. I was in a conference somewhere and the speaker was giving this parable, and he said, the dad, in this case, the dad went out and started a business, and the dad rode a bicycle. And he said, son, one day you will drive a Cadillac. And sure enough, the son grew up and he drove a Cadillac. And the son said, grandchild, or now the son, one day you'll drive a Ferrari. And sure enough, the grandchild drove a Ferrari. And wouldn't you know it, the next generation drove a bicycle. Because they never prepared for how to handle success across generations. And we know as business owners that we will have success. So the third pitfall is not properly planning for multi-generational success. And finally, the fourth pitfall, oh man, if I have a dime for every time I've heard this, it's sibling rivalry. Rivalry. How can one child be treated better than the other? You love them more than you love me. And you can imagine all the various statements. Perhaps you yourself have heard these statements. And if you have, my heart bleeds for you because I know that's not oftentimes the intent of the business owner. It's frustrating. It's hard trying to show equalization or showing how you love one child one way or another child another way and trying to be fair. And I use that word tactically because I can remember growing up looking at mom saying, "This isn't fair," pounding my hand. And she says, "Son, life isn't fair." And about the time I could hear my dad saying, "That's right." Oh, man. But this rivalry of, well, you treat them better than you treat me. How is it that you let them off work earlier than you let me off work? You're harder on them than you're harder on me. There's no way that we can say it any differently than running a business, a family business, is difficult. So how do we mitigate it? How do we mitigate all of these? Take a step back, look at where you're at today, project where you want to be, bring along consultants, coaches, whomever you may need to help you systematically move from where you're at to where you want to be. Now that sounds relatively simple, but like the study shows, passing a business from one generation to the next is tough. No way around it. Friends, I hope you may look at these four pitfalls. These four pitfalls in your business. If you plan on having a multi-generational business, take a hard look. Is entitlement creeping in on you, the team, the kids? Are you trying to pass your dream, not your children's dream, your dream onto your kids? That's a caution. Are you sincerely and earnestly preparing for future generations? If you truly have or want to have a family business, a multi-generational family business, are you truly and sincerely planning for it? And finally, sibling rivalry happens. It happens in a family business. How are you going to mitigate it? If you've dealt with it, great. If you haven't, it's coming. How are you going to mitigate it? See, as business goes, each one of these pitfalls become even more magnificent. As the business numbers increase, as the employees increase, as the business footprint increase, each one of these matters, each one of these pitfalls become significantly larger. Friends, I hope I challenge your thinking a little bit. Hey, perhaps, just perhaps, you've had success. Perhaps, just perhaps, you've navigated through the second generation. Man, I would love to hear the story. Please go to financiallysimple.com, reach out to me, let me know. I would love to hear your story of success. Until next time, friends, living this life is hard. It is. Being a business owner, it's hard. And I can't wait till next week when you're able to hear a father and son who set out on this journey of business and is now shifting into the second generation. I can't wait for you to hear their attitude. I can't wait for you to hear the way they love each other, even in their answers. I think it'll be a powerful episode for you. Friends, go out and make it a great day.